Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Marc Paul and Justin Baker joining us via his vehicle.
It's a car cast.
It's a car cast. It's our own version of the car cast. And on today's show, we decided, first show back of 2025, I'm finally back from my long road trip to the Grand Canyon with my family, and we're ready to roll here for 2025. And we were like, all the things happening in the NHL be damned. We're going to do the top 25 players of the last 25 years to usher in 2025. So we are doing the top 25 players of the 2000s, essentially. What criteria did you use to come up with your list, Justin?
Ooh, that's a good one. Honestly, I should say obviously, looked at the stats, looked at the hardware, right? But it was pretty much the body of work from the 99-2000 season to present, right? One guy you and I talked about that's probably on both of our lists, Jaromir Jagr, right? I pretty much just forgot about everything he did prior to that. Same with another guy on my list, Nick Lidstrom, just pretty much erased everything pre-2000. So yeah, just pretty much took that into consideration. And then I guess then there were some of those softer skills, is what we like to call them in the HR world, the stuff they do behind the scenes, the leadership, what they meant to the team, and of course the wins, the championships, all that other boring stuff.
All right. Yeah, I did a little bit of, I'll say, just because they didn't play their entire career in the 2000s, I'm like with Jagr. Okay, Jagr's obviously on both our lists. If he retired in like 2002, then no way. But because he played more of his career in the 2000s than anything else, even though he left for the KHL for a little while. And he had his best seasons not in the 2000s. But he's still a player on that list that I can't not have him on there. Even though his best years were in the 90s. Which did factor in. If we were going all-time best and these players were on here, all-time best. Yeah, if we included the 90s or something like that, he'd be higher up my list.
Right.
All right, cool.
Yep, same.
All right, then let's get it rolling. Why don't you go through your, what do we say, like maybe your bottom five? Anybody just missed, actually? Did anybody miss your list?
Yeah, I put four guys on my just missed, just because I was curious I'm like, a couple of these players, I'm like, yeah, they probably could have made somebody else's list, but so I was just curious to see if anybody else would have maybe thrown these on. But I've got Joe Pavelski, the Sedin twins, and big Zdeno Chara on my just missed.
Okay. Yeah, I considered something like Corey Perry because he did win a Hart Trophy, and he was a different type of player, almost like Brad Marchand could also be considered on that same plane of you're a different kind of guy. The difference is Corey Perry did win a Hart Trophy. He won actual hardware, whereas Brad Marchand really never has come close to winning any of those. But Marchand in the 2000s, I think he's 26th overall for points, which is it's like almost hard to believe how well he did. I considered doing something like that, like Corey Perry. He won a Hart Trophy. That was my first thing that I looked up. I went, all right, let me look at all the Hart Trophy winners over the last 25 years. And some of it was like, all right, yes, Jose Theodore did win the Hart Trophy. But is he in the top 25 players of the last 25 years? No, I don't think he is. Like now, if we're talking top 25 seasons over the last 25 years, then I think that one would probably be on the list.
And that'd be an interesting list to put together. Okay.
But with it being an entire career or like playing time, I didn't have him in there. Is there anybody that was Patrick Marleau just missed my list?
Okay.
Now, Patrick Marleau is the 9th highest scoring player of the 2000s. He has 1,120 points in 1,624 games, over 500 goals. And yet he misses my list in favor of other people because I don't think I would ever say he was even close to the best player in the NHL at any point. And even though he was very consistent, I didn't put him in there because I just don't think he was ever good enough. But he just lasted a long time. And he was really good, but he was never great.
Yeah, no, same. I think I thought about him too, but when you look at all the guys on my list, at their position at any given point in their careers, you've looked at them and say, they're a top 10 player in the league at their role. Patrick Marleau, I hate to say it, I just never thought of him in a top 10, at least winger or center, whatever he was playing. I never thought he was a top 10 guy, but he was on the cusp of that, but he was very good at his position, but never one of the better players in the league at his role.
Okay. Yep. And then what lent you towards a goalie making it in?
So goaltender, obviously, I think a lot of times with goaltenders, they get overlooked because it's hard to compare stats. And I think we could probably do a list just on goaltenders alone versus skaters. But for me, it's longevity, right? They went and they've been a starter for a very long time, right? They compiled the wins, they've got the hardware, or at one point, I think they were looked at maybe top 3, 4 best goaltender in the league. And not only that, they had success carrying a team, right? You looked at a guy, like I'll just tell you right now, one of the guys on my list is Roberto Luongo. And at multiple points in his career, you looked at him as a guy who carried the team, right? Whether it was Vancouver or Florida, he was essentially, when he was with the Panthers, at least at the first part of his career, he was the Florida Panthers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. He was the Florida Panthers, and really he was a big part of those Canucks teams. He's the only goalie to be a captain in the 2000s. Yes. Yeah, phenomenal goalie. Did Stanley Cups play a factor for you?
A little bit.
Did you weigh those in there?
Yeah, they played a little bit. And I think when you look at guys who won Stanley Cups, I looked at it more specifically on like how you factored into that cup. For example, again, I'll just spoiler alert, another guy on my list was Steven Stamkos, but one of those Stanley Cup runs, he really didn't factor into it. Luckily for him, he's got multiple cups, but for guys who maybe only have one of those, how much did you really factor into it? I mean, were you just a fourth line grinder, or were you at the tail end of your career where you're only playing 10, 12 minutes a night? Luckily, none of those guys, again, on my list were like that. But for me, it did play a little bit of a factor because there's a couple guys on my list that don't have Stanley Cups, and maybe that kind of knocked them down a notch or two, where maybe you might look at them as far as point totals and say, shoot, they were top 5 all time. So,
all right. Yeah, I like it. Overall, this list it's so hard because the other side of it is the way that people played hockey in 2002 is drastically different. Like, we try to compare era. Hey, who's the best player ever? And we're like Bobby Orr, Maurice Richard. And that was now comparing those things. This is 70 years ago that Maurice Richard started playing.
that's crazy.
It's crazy. I remember as a really little kid reading about hockey, and it was like, oh, this is a different era, and that was only 40 years ago at the time. But even when you compare how much the game has changed, maybe over the course of a 20-year span, maybe the most the game has ever changed in a quick amount of time. Like, the difference between 50s hockey and 70s hockey is really just like there was always fighting. It's just, honestly, the league got diluted, so there was less talent, so the scoring went up. But it's not as if the game didn't change a ton, other than, yeah, okay, defensemen started to move the puck because of Bobby Orr. That's probably the biggest shift that you see there. Is, okay, defensemen start to be activated. But then it's the 90s brought about this ridiculous defensive play, the trap, as we all know it. And then 2005, after the lockout, that's when things started to open up. And like, the league finally went, oh, we should probably let guys play hockey. Let's play hockey.
They took an inch off the goalie's pads is what had happened.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, there started to be a lot more thought towards, all right, maybe we shouldn't let them be a giant balloon inside of the net. I remember as a kid, I was just like, what's the difference between what happens now and, like, why don't they just go get like a sumo wrestler and slap them in net and just have them fill it all up? But okay, why don't we get to our list, and I'll let you read off your first 5 names on your list.
All right, let's go. So I've got 2 goaltenders on this. So at 25, I've got Marc-Andre Fleury. We know the success he had in Pittsburgh. And unfortunately, I think why he was so low on my list is just because his one Vezina just been a shortened season. So I often wonder, it was very dominant, but I wonder in a longer stretch of games, would he have had as much success? So that's why he's a little bit lower. 24, I've got Duncan Keith. At 23, I've got Steven Stamkos. 22, Patrice Bergeron. And 21, Jonathan Quick.
Okay. No, Jonathan Quick. Yeah, Jonathan Quick. These are really, I want to focus in on that name because I feel like he had 2 really great playoffs. But outside of those years, he was just a good goalie to me. He had some other good seasons. It's not that he didn't have good seasons. He's a goalie that I guess in my mind I never quite got my mind wrapped around him because he got so hot in those playoffs. And again, if we're talking about best seasons, like he definitely has that individual season, that run all the way to the finals in the playoffs, he was absolutely ridiculous. But let's also not forget that year, the Kings finished 8th. They were having quite a bad season until they squeaked into the playoffs, and they were supposed to, I don't think they were really, it was like, are they contenders? We're not really sure. We think they're a playoff team and maybe more, and like maybe they could win a round. And then Quick got crazy hot and Daryl Sutter did his thing and they went crazy. But I never really saw him as a guy that you went, oh, like he's winning. He's helping that team to just have great regular seasons as well. So what was it the runs, just the Stanley Cup final runs that got you in there?
I will say what put him ahead of a guy like, for example, Patrice Bergeron, right? And that's the guy that I looked at him and compared him to the most, where maybe the numbers aren't as flashy, right? Patrice Bergeron was never known for being an offensive dynamo. He was a model of consistency, right? You always knew he was going to win 55, 60% of his draws, put up 60 points, and you were going to get good defensive play, right? And so for me, Jonathan Quick, at least through those stretches in LA, you knew you were going to get consistent goaltending. I think he had a couple down years there, which, I mean, I hate to say it, all goalies do, right? I don't know many goaltenders besides Dominik Hasek and maybe Patrick Waugh who have had just consistent good years every single year, right? But the difference with me with a guy like Bergeron is Quick. He was often considered the top goaltender in the league, although he never had any hardware to go with it. He did get a couple
That's what I'm
Jennings trophies.
saying. He didn't win a Vezina. So
Yeah,
that to me says that people never saw him as the best goalie in the NHL.
yeah, and I thought about that, but a lot of times when you looked at that, people looked at that Daryl Sutter team and thought, oh, they're just so good defensively. And you know what? I think a lot of people looked at a guy like Chris Osgood, for example, and say, oh, he only got his wins because he played on such good teams. But you still had to go out there and play. You still had to go out there and stop a couple of pucks.
No, those runs are epic. Like he could be on your list simply because those. I was just wondering if it was because of those runs. If you,
yeah, definitely,
he won 2 Stanley Cups, and they won 2 Stanley Cups because of him. And he won the MVP of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, both times.
Yeah, when he had a .940 save percentage.
This is the first time, right?
Yeah.
Did Kopitar won the other one?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I don't have Quick on my list. Essentially replaced him with Kopitar.
Okay.
In there. I know Kopitar is, I think, Kopitar is the 6th highest scoring player of the 2000s. Incredible consistency. I just don't, I've never, same kind of deal. I can never really consider him the best player. And you don't have to be on the list, of course, but never considered the best player. Never, to me, even considered the best center. I don't know if he would ever even be considered the top 5 centers in the league. If we were going, oh, yes, he could be in the top 5, he's maybe number 4, number 5 at any given point. Now, that doesn't mean he's hasn't been really great. Obviously, he's got 2 Stanley Cups, which is 2 more than a lot of the people that are also on the list that I have. Okay, let me just, I'll run it down. I've got number 25. I've got Leon Draisaitl, actually.
Ooh.
I think he's right now 37th on the list. 911 points in 760 games. He's on pace right now. Like, I look at a lot of the other guys that are in the top, top 50 of scoring, and most of them don't even have a point per game, a lot of them. When I look at just his production so far, I got to throw him on there. And at least he's been to a Stanley Cup final, Game 7 now. So we can throw that in there. And he's won an MVP. He's done all the things. I do have Marc-Andre Fleury at 24. Then Kopitar at 23. Yeah, 23. Bergeron at 22. And then Marian Hossa at 21.
I like that.
Is that what you did? You did 25 to 21, or did you do number 20 as well?
Yeah, 25 to 21.
Okay. All right, perfect. Yeah, Hossa, and I wanted to have Hossa higher. Like, he's 10th in scoring, over 1,100 points, 510 goals. I just never felt like there was a time when he was the best player on his team. However, he was the best defensive player probably on every team that he was on. And he was the missing link on every single team that he was on, at least to get to the finals. It was like Pittsburgh he was on, and then they lost in the finals. Then he went to Detroit, and then Detroit lost in the finals. And then he goes to Chicago, and then he wins 3 Stanley Cups over the next, what was it, in 5 years?
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
And I think widely considered outside of best overall, like all around winger in the NHL. And that's what gets him on that list to me, is that he really was considered, like, he was so good defensively and he could score. Like, the guy could do everything. I did hold a long grudge against him. Like, absolutely. So I believe it was like 2001, maybe, when he was on the Ottawa Senators.
Oh, yeah.
And he took a shot and he like followed through the most wild follow through you've ever seen. And he might as well have been holding a golf club and full swing through. And the back part of his swing catches Brian Berard right across the eyeball. And I don't think I've ever seen so much blood on the ice outside of maybe when
Richard
Zednik got his jugular cut, which fair. But yeah, there was this like blood all over the place. And then Brian Berard, of course, like he was a top defenseman, like top 2 defenseman for the Leafs, and never played for the Leafs again. He came back and had a little stint with Columbus, but he could not see out of his eye. Like, I think one of his eyes was messed up. I think he still managed like 30 points in a year. He was a great offensive defenseman. And I think had the Leafs had Berard that year, I really think there was a chance that they could have made a longer run. If you think about it, like, he was their offensive dynamo. You lose that guy from the back end, it hurts you. You can't replace that guy.
And it does.
So anyways, that's my grudge against Hossa, but I got over it eventually. It took I think it took him going to Chicago for me to get over it, because when he was on Detroit, I was just like, this makes it very easy to hate you. Very easy. Just rooting hard against him and laughing hard when, like, seeing him lose again. But then he redeemed himself for me. I got over my grudge.
Sounds like it.
Motherfucker. All right, let's go to 20 through 16. Who do you have on there?
Yeah, number 20, I've got Duncan Keith. Speaking of some Chicago Blackhawk players, at 19.
Wait, one second. Who's number 24 on your list?
Oh, wait, hold on. Did I put him in there twice?
I see. Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at your list.
No. You're right. I did.
I was I was racking my brain. I was like, is there another Keith I'm missing? Because I have a friend named Joel Keith. I was like, he didn't make the list. No way. Yeah. Okay. So you just accidentally have him in there twice. See, so now you can have Joe Pa on there, or
no? We're gonna throw Leon Draisaitl. Your argument swayed me, so we're gonna throw him in there.
All right, there we go. Draisaitl squeaks in. He wasn't even on your just missed, and now he squeaks in on the list.
We'll throw him in at 24.
There we go.
Yeah, 19, Marian Hossa. I just think, just for a winger, his defensive play was so underrated. Gave him a little bump. And 18, Victor Hedman. There's multiple years he's been just the top guy in the league, and is up there as well. And then at 17 and 16, I've got a pair of goaltenders, King Henrik at 17 and Roberto Luongo at 16.
All right. Luongo higher than Henrik.
Why is that? Yeah, I think I had a hard time with this one, but ultimately I think just what he, both these guys were huge for the franchises and almost essentially for good stretches, both of them were just the face of each franchise, right? But the fact that I think Luongo went to two different franchises for me and was you mentioned it, he was captain of Vancouver for I think it was just a year maybe, but
just a year. Yeah, it was the year that they got skunked by Chicago in the playoffs, and I think that they came back the next year and they were like, "This is too much. Like this position requires too much focus to go and then be like, hey, you have to be also the captain."
Right.
I think it was just too much for him.
Yeah, but the fact that he did it for two franchises and just what he meant, just overall what he meant to Florida, I think he meant a little bit more to Florida than maybe Lundqvist did for the Rangers, so he just gets a little bump for me.
Imagine this. If the New York Islanders don't trade Roberto Luongo for the first overall pick and draft Rick DiPietro, where are the New York Islanders today?
Oh,
maybe they have a Stanley Cup because they did have some good teams. They just never had a goaltender.
Yeah.
They never had a goaltender. And think about the difference of trajectory if your franchise has Roberto Luongo instead of Garth Snow. I mean,
no offense, but
talking a world. They had some really good play. Like they had Yashin and Pekka. Like they had some really nice players on that team. They just never had the goalie. And imagine throwing in quite possibly the best goaltender of his era.
And they had Zdeno Chara. Imagine if they kept him too.
And they had Chara. Yeah,
dude.
Yeah, they
multiple cups.
I think that someone closed their eyes and went, I want that guy. And then they drafted him, and then they were like, they're not that good. And then they would let them go. Actually, the Chara was in the trade for Yashin, so they didn't have both of them at the
That's true. Yeah, very true.
But I think it was Mike Pekka. I think he sat out an entire year because of a contract dispute.
That sounds about right. Yep.
And then Alexei Yashin, he's the one that signed that they signed him like a 10-year deal, I think, and he only played a few of it.
Went to Ottawa.
Right. And then, of course, I think they're still paying Rick DiPietro. He still gets like $1.5 million a year.
Dude, just it's like that guy from the New York Mets that gets paid every year. Oh, who the frick is that?
I don't know anything about baseball.
Hold on.
Well, I know a little bit. I don't know.
It's Bobby Bonilla Day. That's what it is.
Oh, yep. Yes, Bobby Bonilla. Yes,
he gets a check for about $1.2 million till 2035.
That's amazing.
And he hasn't played since 2011.
What a contract!
Dude,
it's a great contract to sign.
Give that agent a raise.
I want to sign a contract like that. Where is? Maybe is Rick DiPietro not getting paid anymore? I can't find him.
Is it?
I can't find him on Puckpedia here.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to look. Maybe contract ends in 28-29. He gets $1.5 million a year. Yep.
Nice.
28-29. So he still gets another $1.5 million for another 4 seasons.
How nice. How nice would that be?
He hasn't played since 2014. That's amazing. Oh, it's fantastic. Okay. I guess I should tell you my list.
Yes, let's hear it.
So at number 20, I have Stamkos. So I'm a little bit higher than you did. The reason I had him a little higher, goal scoring is the pinnacle, right? And
sure.
He has a lot of goals. Third most goals in the 2000s. He's got 567, second only to the guy who's going to be the all-time goal leader in NHL history eventually, Alex Ovechkin, and then Sidney Crosby. So that's pretty damn good company to be in, and I think that deserves the top 20 nod. That and 2 Stanley Cups, 4 Cup final appearances. Like the guy has done it all, and he is battled through injuries to continue. Like there was a point, remember when he broke his leg when he was like sliding into the net and his leg just snapped in half at the shin? And I think it was at that point, and he'd already had some injuries that people were, is his career going to be what everybody thought it would be, because it sure seems like he's maybe going to flake out here. Like, how's he going to keep on? How's he going to stay healthy? And really, it's actually been the back half of his career that he's a Hall of Fame player. It's cemented him in the Hall of Fame. And I hope that when I look up this list, my top 20, I don't think there's a guy on here that's either not in the Hall of Fame already or will be in the Hall of Fame.
I agree.
And I would assume that probably most of the names we've already said are also going to be in the Hall of Fame. Okay, yeah, so I've got Stamkos 20. I doubled up. Henrik and Daniel Sedin, how can you separate them? I have them at 19. As a collective, they have more points than anybody. They've both won a scoring title. I believe it was Henrik who won the Hart Trophy in 2011, 2010, somewhere in there. I think when they went to the finals. Both guys just... the real reason they made it this high is because maybe they weren't considered... I do think Henrik Sedin was definitely considered like top 5 centerman in the league.
I
but
think so.
Together, they were the best duo in the NHL for a minute. For several seasons, it was like, these guys are doing things that nobody else can do. And it was just a treat to be able to watch them. And I think the game actually changed because of them. I think the cycle game that these two used, nobody else had really seen it before. And I think the way that the game sped up now, you see the Sedin style cycle game coming through, which may be more of a tip to Sweden as much as the Sedins themselves. But when you see these two guys play together as long as they did, they just knew where each other were going to be. But they also knew each other where they were going to be because they had a system that they worked with. On top of that, I think it actually has really made coaches go, why are we splitting guys up as often as we do? Like, if players play together, they're going to be better together. And I think that the Sedins had some impact on why now we look at the way that we do lines. A lot of times it's, we want to get these two guys together. We want to get these two guys together. We don't really care who the third guy is. And that really wasn't the case before the Sedins. I'm sure that you had Lemieux and Jagr playing together at times. You can write off whoever that third guy is. But I think they really changed the way that a lot of people looked at the formation of a team, because they just did not play a part ever. And I don't think they would have let it happen either. Like, who the heck's... Yeah, sorry, we're not going to play for a team. Just don't bother drafting us unless you draft both of us. That's an amazing... Like, nobody... People go back to, Lindros, he's such a dick. He didn't want to play for the Nordiques. And, these guys that try to say they don't want to play for this team, it's so unclassy. The Sedins were like, I don't want to play without my brother. And they're like, that's such a heartwarming story. They forced teams' hands. Like, they... So I think it's wonderful. It's cool. And I think they should be in the top 20. I hope they get inducted into the Hall of Fame at the same time.
Same.
If they don't, it's a freaking travesty. The last thing they have to do together. Okay, sorry. And then number 18, I have Hedman as well. And then I have Henrik Lundqvist at 17, and I have Erik Karlsson at 16.
Did not make my list. Okay.
Yeah, he only won 3 Norrises. He has the most Norris trophies out of anyone outside of Nick Lidstrom in the 2000s. And now I know the Norris Trophy has become a little bit more of a points game, but he also he has the second most points out of any defenseman in this era outside of Brent Burns, who's played 413 more games than him, and they're only 48 points apart. So, anyways. Erik Karlsson, number 16 on my list. I actually, it's funny. I don't have Roberto Luongo on my list. Maybe I should, but he is a Hall of Famer for sure. He's going to be a Hall of Famer because he played so many damn games too. He He never won. I know Henrik Lundqvist won. Henrik Lundqvist, to me, he was the best goalie in the league for 5 or 6 years. Luongo, it was like, you might be the best, but you also play on this garbage team. And then when he went to Vancouver, and he actually made it to the playoffs. They were supposed to make runs, and other than the one, of course, hey, you lost in Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Finals. It's a toss up, but there were many playoff runs where he completely collapsed. So I lean towards him as, hey, he was a really good regular season goalie, but when the playoffs came, he just never seemed to be able to defeat the other guy on the other side of the ice.
Okay.
So I left him off I guess you could say he was one of my just missed. And part of me wants to take Marc-Andre Fleury at 24 and swap him with Henrik Lundqvist, because Fleury won so many cups in Vezina, like one of Vezina as an old timer. But I think that Henrik Lundqvist was the best goalie in the league for a long time, and that's got to keep him in there. He just wasn't always on the best team.
Fair. Okay.
But they made it to the finals twice with him.
They did.
Yeah. All right. Now we're into the top 15.
Okay.
All right, let's go.
All right, so I made a quick little revision this morning. Didn't update my list, but thought about this a little bit more. So number 15, I've got Anze Kopitar, followed by Jaromir Jagr at 14,
Okay.
Austin Matthews at 13, Jaromir Jagr at 12, and then at 11, I've got Nikita Kucherov.
Okay. My 5 are like basically the exact same players, just swapped around. I've got Jagr, Iginla, Kucherov, Matthews, Datsuk.
Okay.
So Datsuk's the only one who I think he was higher up on your list.
Yeah, it could be the hometown nostalgia,
and that's fine. But still, to put him above those names, like Jagr, overall, I think we would both agree Jagr had the better career than Datsuk.
Sure.
Better play, like top 5 in points all time, right? And to put him ahead of Matthews, do we think that by the time Matthews' career is over, that Matthews wouldn't jump Iginla?
Oh, yeah. I think in 2 or 3 years, I think for me, Austin Matthews would probably be a top 10 list maker here.
And I think Matthews probably, even now, you would say, I don't know. Who would you rather have to build the franchise around, Matthews or Datsuk? I think in this era, you would pick Matthews. I think maybe in the era that Datsuk played in, oh man, I think you'd still pick Matthews. but Datsuk, he's got the cups.
The Lady Bings and everything else.
Yeah, and I don't.
Matthews got the heart, but
I think Matthews has a Lady Bing, doesn't he?
I don't know. That's a good question.
If he doesn't have a Lady Bing, he's been like up for it a couple of times. Yeah, I guess I just put him ahead because I think Datsuk was doing things that no one else dreamed of doing at the time. Like the way that he could just pickpocket you. Now, it's funny because Matthews actually, in a lot of ways, he has that same vibe. Like Matthews is a pickpocketer. I think he learned it from Datsuk. Like they look the same in a lot of ways. Now Matthews is much bigger and obviously the better overall goal scorer. In a lot of ways, they actually do play a similar game. It's just Datsuk's career is over. We're going to give him the nod right now. He's got the cups. He won. Was he on the team in 2002 when they won, or was that just Zetterberg?
He was.
He was.
He played on a line with Brett Hull and Luc Robitaille.
That's right. Yes, they played on like the fourth line. Was it Zetterberg that wasn't there?
Zetterberg was. He didn't come until 2004, but it was funny. They had an interview with Brett Hull when they were talking about like this team that basically they bought the Stanley Cup with. That mantra.
Yeah, $75 million compared to the next team that was like 60.
Crazy. Anyways, but so they talked to Brett Hull and they're like, yeah, I watched this little tiny Russian kid come out and he's just like, he's doing things that I've never seen anybody else do before. And part of the reason why I have him a little higher on my list than a guy like Matthews right now, because I do think Matthews for me is the defensive part of his game. When you talk about pickpocketing and those kind of things is so underrated just because of how good of a goal scorer I think he is. people overlook that aspect of his game. But they interview guys on so many different occasions during Datsuk's career, and they're like, "Who do you hate playing against the most?" And everybody, Datsuk, don't want to play him. Don't want to play against him.
He made
Just
you look like an idiot.
every
Like,
time.
Marty Turco still has nightmares of Datsuk just like breaking his ankles the other way in
Ia
shootouts.
Pecorine, man. Just forget about it.
And maybe the best shootout player ever. Like, is there anybody that you would say, I want him in a shootout more than Datsuk?
Maybe Patty
Maybe
Kane.
Patrick Kane? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, if that's the company you're in a dogfight with Patrick Kane for best shootout guy, like, yeah, you're doing pretty well. Definitely some of the best highlight shootouts for Datsuk.
Dude,
And
that
yeah,
slow-mo against Chicago, forget about it.
yep. Puck on a string. Yeah, nobody else was doing the slow-mo. Was he the first guy to do the slow-mo? Maybe he got it from someone else, but he's the first
Yeah, there
one.
was a guy overseas that I think did it first, but he was the first in the NHL to do it
The
for sure.
perfecter of it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can't go wrong with having Datsuk up this high. It is interesting to have him up this high compared to a Hedman, who's won a lot of Norris trophies. I'm fine with it. Maybe a little bit of a home. Like, I also watched him a ton too, and that's going to play a little bit of a factor. But yeah, he was unreal. Kucherov, where was Kucherov on your list? He was like
11 for me. Yep.
11. Why Kucherov over? Oh no, he was 15 on yours.
I went back and thought about it a little bit more and swapped team and Kopitar.
Gotcha. Why'd you switch him?
Again, when we talk about guys being the best at their position or best in the game, Kucherov has been, at least you can recollect in the last 5-6 years, he's been up there as far as when you talk about Hart Trophy nominees, right? Every single year he's up there, right? Where a guy like Kopitar hasn't really had that luxury, and now Kopitar's defensive game is unparalleled. I will probably argue it was better than Bergeron's in my opinion, but that's a topic for another day. But for me, Kucherov, just those 120-plus point season, and it was unreal. What he does is crazy.
Which definitely helps having another person on our list, Stamkos, on your wing.
Right.
I will say this, out of anyone, maybe on this entire list, best power play guy, Kucherov. Is there anyone that you want more on your power play than Kucherov? Maybe Ovechkin.
Yeah.
Definitely Ovechkin. But
if Ovechkin's covered up, he lacks that ability to circle around and get free, right?
Whereas Kucherov, he can dish the puck, but he can also score. Like,
right.
He's got that shot from the right circle that it's almost unexpected, because you're like, he's not a goal scorer, and then I had 45 goals. So yeah, and Kucherov, obviously his career is definitely not over either. So that's
he's still killing it.
Got more to go. Where's he all time or for points in this era? He's 33rd, but 931 points in 762 games. So he continues that pace, and he'll definitely be in the top 10 there by the time his career's over. Okay, let's scoot into the top 10.
Okay. 10 through 6. So I've got another Russian here at 10, Evgeny Malkin. At number 9, Nate McKinnon. This guy, gosh, just a slow start to his career, but really, if he had anything close to what he's been doing here in the last 5-6 years, and we'd talk about him being an all-timer, without a doubt. And then number 8 for me, Martin Brodeur. Number 7, probably the guy that doesn't have a cup that I think deserved a cup more than anybody else, Joe Thornton. And number 6, Patty Kane for me.
Okay, we're very close on here. I have McKinnon at 10.
Okay.
I have Thornton at 9. I also have Brodeur at 8, Malkin at 7, and Kane at 6. Man, Brodeur, there's a chance he could be higher on here because of all the freaking hardware that the guy has. The one thing that did make me go, one of his cups was in the 90s. He won a lot of games in the 90s. So if we're going like full on career, I don't think I'd want to put him higher than anyone on this list, just because of the team he played on. It's another one of those. I think he was a Hall of Fame goalie on a ridiculous defensive team. So it doesn't take away what he did, but it does make you go, maybe leaning it against some of these other guys who are playing in a much more offensive time. Although I guess you could say, hey, like McDavid's playing in a much more offensive time. Does he have as many points as he has if he's playing in 2001? Probably not.
Probably not. If
So
he's
like there
taking
is a
elbows and
balance.
getting Scott Stevened in the middle of the ice.
Yeah. When that was, I wasn't going to put Scott Stevens on here. I thought about Scott Niedermayer making the list because
Yeah, that's a good one.
he won the cup in 2000, 2003, and 2007 with the Ducks.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a huge part of those wins. So I thought about putting him on there, but I just didn't. So,
Fair.
anyways, Patrick Kane only at 6. I want to know why. Maybe I'll ask that after we go through the next guys on the list a little bit
That's fair.
higher.
That's fair.
Joe Thornton never won a cup. He did win a Hart, and I think he won a scoring title, right? When he had 100 and a million
50
assists.
assists.
Ridiculous year. That was the year that Jonathan Cheechoo had 98 goals.
And that's why I think he got a little higher on my list, because he took a guy who any other year is only a 10 goal scorer and decided, you know what? I'm so good at passing. I'm just going to make him the best goal scorer in the league. And to me, when you look at this list, outside of Sidney Crosby and probably McDavid, he is the best passer in this group.
It's amazing. Jonathan Cheechoo had 56 goals in 2005, 2006. Did he lead the league in goals that year?
He did.
Yeah, and he had 93 points. And then he had 37 the following year, 69 points. And then his best year after that, he only lasted 4 more years in the NHL. And then he played a long time in the AHL. He played another 4 years in the AHL. And then he went to the KHL for 4 more years.
Dude, okay.
And even in those leagues, his best year in the AHL was 56 points in 70 games. He just could never reproduce it. He had the year of his life.
Dude, that he did.
But yes. Okay. Should we just go into the top 5? And then I'll ask you about Patrick Kane.
Let's do it.
Let's go number 5 and 4.
Okay.
Who do you have there?
Datsuk at 5 and McDavid at 4.
Okay. I have Chris Pronger at 5.
Ooh.
Who didn't make my list. And I have him as the 5th best player in the era. So that's something to talk about. And I have a McDavid at 4. I think we have probably the same top 3 as well.
Yeah. And I'll just tell you right now, too, also my battery's got 15 minutes, so let's make of it what you will. Not to discount our viewers any more discussion here, but.
So Chris Pronger, only 23rd all-time not all-time, 20 in the 2000s. Only 23rd in points, which if we're going purely on points, our list could look a little lot different. There was this time when the Oilers got him. He won the cup the Oilers was first. He gets traded to the Oilers, takes him to the Stanley Cup final, and then he goes to Anaheim and they win the cup. And every place he went, and then he went to Philadelphia, and they randomly went to the Stanley Cup finals. Like everywhere that guy went, his team won, and he was maddening to play against. It was like that cornerback. You get a top cornerback in the NFL, and no matter who they're up against, like quarterbacks don't even throw their direction. Even if it's right. All right, hey, I've got the best receiver in the NHL and the NFL, I'm not going to throw over there because it's too dangerous. And that was Chris Pronger for years. I think, and the fact that he's not on your list just, again, probably shows he's maybe the most underrated defenseman of all time.
He
won a Hart Trophy. There's very few defensemen who have won a Hart Trophy. He won that in, I believe that was 2000. So right at the very beginning and that was with St. Louis they won the President's Trophy that year, and then they lost in the first round, I think, to the San Jose Sharks, actually. But just a phenomenal defenseman. Like, true defenseman. He could put up points, but he could defend. He could make that good first pass, but it was in an era where that first pass was getting dumped in, and you were losing those second assists because of the way that the game was played. So I think that's some of the reason he didn't put up as many points. But
that's
just
fair.
Absolutely dominant. Like, the Oilers against the Red Wings never should have lost that series. And I know people will look at Dwayne Rollison and they'll say he was unbelievable. But it was Chris Pronger. He's the reason that they won that series.
He was one of it. Yes, absolutely.
He drove that team nuts. So Chris Pronger, top 5. He's probably outside of Nicholas Lidstrom, out of any defenseman to play in this era. I'll take him over Hedman.
Ooh.
I'll take him over Hedman.
Oh, don't agree with that, but I respect it.
If Pronger had played in the era that Hedman played in, he would have put up similar points, I think. Just Pronger played in a time where no one was putting up points, let alone a defenseman.
Okay.
All right. Top 3.
Yeah.
Let's hear them.
All right. I've got Alexander Ovechkin at number 3.
Yep.
Probably, to me, I'll still say Mike Bossy to me is the greatest goal scorer of all time, but I think Ovi's about to cement his name in that legacy there. He's, I think, 24 goals away now? 23, something like that? It's very doable.
872, I think?
Yeah. And then number 2, I've got Nick Lidstrom, and of course, number 1, I'm sure, similar for you, Sidney Crosby. Undeniably the best player of this era, without a doubt.
Absolutely. Yes, without a doubt. How many times did Mike Bossy lead the league in goals?
That's a good question, actually.
NHL leading goal scorer by season. You said Mike Bossy's the best goal scorer of all time. So I just wanted to see how many times he led the league in goals, and it was 2 times. In 78-79 and 80-81. Now a lot of yes. Yeah, so he didn't beat out Charlie Simmer, and then Wayne Gretzky. Very great.
Yeah, that's unfair.
But if he's the best goal scorer, should he not have the most goals? Even more than a guy who is like.
Well, this is a guy who only played 9 years of hockey.
And that's why I'm not saying all-time goal scorer
okay.
or leader, because, yeah, obviously not fair. He didn't play enough games. But he only led the league in goals twice, whereas other guys, when he led the league, he had 68 goals and 64, 60. Gretzky was scoring 92. So, I don't know. Just maybe the best shot could give you something like that. And the Islanders did play a little bit different of a style than what Gretzky was playing. But anyways, great goal scorer. Hall of Fame goal scorer. I don't know if I would say he's the best goal scorer ever. But... Oh, Justin's phone died. No! Top 3, Crosby, Lidstrom, Ovi. I think pretty easy to agree on that. And I will speak for Justin when I say that we'll be pumping out more episodes here. Oh, did he come back? Is he back? There he is. Oh, we've got... there we go. Did you die?
Did you die? Yeah, the battery's gone. It's out.
There we go. I was just gonna jet out anyways.
So
no worries.
Okay. Just got to give the listeners one last view or one last look at his face.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course.
For my benefit. There's our show. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, all the things at OT Hockey Talk. And we will talk to you guys very soon. Peace.